Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano. It has the 5th of December, 2023. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So kicking off today, I was reminded of something today actually by Superfizz on Twitter. So he tweeted out saying, Beacon Chain Genesis Depositor POAP holders are some of the most committed and aligned participants on the network. These users deposited before the Beacon Chain even existed, and I believe they deserve to be part of every future airdrop. And I forgot about this Genesis POAP. I have one of these, of course, because I was a Beacon Chain Genesis depositor, and I'm sure some of you guys out there were this as well. But the reason why I wanted to talk about this was because I think POAPs are a really cool product generally, and I think they're a really cool product for doing Sybil resistance as well. So for example, if you wanted to find a group of really early committed Ethereans to airdrop your token to, for example, and something that can't be Sybiled and something that you have like relative certainty wasn't Sybiled at the time because there was no real, there was no real purpose to doing that at the time, right? Then this would be perfect because you're really just targeting the most hardcore and most plugged in Ethereans who basically claim this POAP after being a Beacon Chain depositor, a Genesis depositor here, which I think is really cool. And most of them would have been solo stakers, or pretty much all of them would have been solo stakers, which even goes a step further, right? So this is a unique case where you've got a POAP that represents all of that. And then if you are a new project, or you are a project that wants to align yourself really closely with the Ethereum community, airdropping to your token to these people could be one way of doing that. Now, I'm not just saying that because I want to get airdrops for basically holding this POAP, but it really extends beyond just this one POAP, right? It really extends to basically the criteria for all airdrops, and how I really wish teams and projects were more creative with how they actually distributed their airdrops on Ethereum here. I know that every team has their own way of doing it, and you have to filter through all the airdrop farmers, and it's become, airdrop farming has become an industry in of itself at this point. But generally, there are a ton of different ways you can do this. There are a ton of different ways that you can find early committed Ethereum users. But I think the teams are mostly preoccupied, unfortunately, with trying to filter out all the airdrop farmers rather than trying to find the most, aligned people that they can airdrop to. Because when it comes to airdrops, especially these days, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, right? If you don't do a token, then people are just going to keep asking for a token forever, and your business potentially can be cannibalized by a project that does do a token. And I think the perfect example of this is OpenSea and Blur. OpenSea never did a token, right? Or hasn't done it yet, and everyone has expected a token for years. But OpenSea's valuation has collapsed, their market share has collapsed, and Blur took a lot of market share away because they had a token. They had token incentives there. And this doesn't always work, right? These vampire attacks definitely have failed more times than they have worked, but that's the risk you kind of run by not doing a token. And then if you did do a token, so for example, let's say OpenSea did a token, there will be plenty of people complaining that they didn't get enough of an airdrop, or that the token distribution's unfair, and so on and so forth, right? So that, I guess, is an orthogonal issue to just airdropping generally. But it's kind of funny to just walk through all the dynamics here and how teams have such a hard time designing their airdrop, because not only do they have to design it for to be as fair as possible, they also have to filter out all the airdrop farmers, which, as I said, it's an industry now, and it's becoming really, really hard to filter them out. And with the advent of AI now and all these AI tools coming online, it's going to be even harder, because people can just train these AIs to basically look like real users. And then it's going to be basically the teams doing the airdrops having to employ their own AIs to filter through it. And then it's just a complete mess. So I think that we may be able to rely on historical stuff like these POAPs, but at the same time, you can only go back so far, right? I mean, you could go back and only airdrop things to people who participated in the Ethereum ICO, for example, but there are plenty of people who participated in that ICO that aren't around anymore. I mean, it has been 10 years, well, almost 10 years. It'll be like 10 years mid next year or something like that, since the ICO. So a lot of those people definitely are gone by now, or aren't as plugged in by now. And then you go down the path of, okay, do these people actually deserve an airdrop? They bought the ETH ICO. They're probably pretty wealthy at this point, unless they sold ETH, immediately after it started trading or something like that. So there is definitely a balance there, but there is no easy solution. There is no perfect solution here. It is an uphill battle, and I think a lot of teams generally try to avoid getting in the weeds here, because it just takes up a lot of time for them as well. It takes time away from other things like actually developing the product, and it turns toxic very quickly as well. So yeah, I don't envy the teams that don't have tokens yet, because they're dealing with this. And even the teams that say they're never going to have a token, like for example, Coinbase has said that they have no plans for a base token. Like, the thing is that even if there is a 0.00001% chance that Base will have a token one day, I actually think the chance is higher than that. I do think that Base will eventually have a token, maybe far into the future, maybe earlier. I think it really depends on regulatory clarity. But regardless of what I think, even if the chance is super, super low, if the cost to farm that airdrop is relatively low and then you're happy to pay that cost on the off chance that you do get an airdrop one day, then you're going to farm it, especially for something like Base, which you can assume because it's an L2, because it's tied to Coinbase, it would be worth a lot, right, from the get-go. And the airdrop would potentially be worth a lot as well. So there are all these different dynamics at play here, and that's why it's become an industry, because there's just money on the table to be had. But as I said before, this is something that I don't envy teams for. Because you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And if you do, you have to basically run through all the motions, and then you do it, and then people hate you anyway. So yeah, anyway, just I wanted to use Fizz's tweet here as a springboard to talk about that, because it is something that I think about a lot, and it's in token distributions generally, and about how I actually miss the days of ICOs, because I actually think they're fairer than the way that token sales are done these days. Like, as someone who participates in a lot of obviously early stage investments that later convert to tokens in my angel investing, it's not fair. Like, honestly, it isn't fair. I think that the much fairer model is ICOs, even though those were gamed and farmed as well. It's just a different type of gaming, because the early stage angel investment, I mean, that's also gamed, and a lot of the big lead investors come in and swoop up most of the round anyway, because they've got money and they just come in with it, and then they say to the team, hey, we'll give you this money, and then, you know, if you're a brand new team, you're like, oh yeah, I want that money because that'll let me have runway for like 5 years or something like that. So complex issue, lots to kind of unpack there, but I'm not going to bore you guys with the rest of that for today's episode, because there's a bunch of other stuff to get through. There's actually I guess, I don't know if I'm going to call this a bullish rant or just like a rant that I'm going to go on for a little bit here. But I came across this tweet today that Ryan Sean Adams from Bankless, of course, put out, where he basically made the case for why ETH being priced at 2.2K is hilarious, aka just ridiculous that it is still priced so low. And he went through his reasoning here, and you can check this out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so, because I'm not going to read out the whole tweet. But it was basically saying things like, you know, ETH as a network makes a lot of revenue and a lot of profits because of the high fee revenues. ETH's deflationary. You know, ETH has a real yield with the staking rate, which I'll actually discuss in a sec. Or ETH is proof of stake, ETH is getting an ETF. So the risk reward here of buying ETH instead of other assets is really, really good. And it actually is really, really good in my opinion as well. I mean, this is not investment advice, and you guys know I'm like an ultra ETH bull anyway, right? And I'm going to be bullish on ETH anyway. But I think if you look at the landscape right now, and you look at all the other assets out there, and then you even compare ETH to Bitcoin, obviously, because if you're comparing it on a risk-adjusted basis, you have to compare it to Bitcoin. I still think from this point on, ETH is just such an incredibly undervalued asset compared to the rest of crypto right now. Like, there is no, it makes no sense that ETH is worth, you know, as much as it is right now compared to BTC. It should be worth more. And if we're using BTC as a measuring stick, I mean, I believe that ETH should be worth more than BTC. But if you want to be, I guess, I'm not going to say realistic, because I realistically think ETH should be worth more than BTC. But if you want to play the side of it of an investor that's not playing favorites with ETH or BTC, but is just looking for the best risk-adjusted return, like, I don't know how you can look at ETH right now, compare it to Bitcoin, compare it to other ecosystems, and come to the conclusion that ETH is fair valued. I don't think it's fair valued at all. I think ETH should be worth a lot more than it is for a number of different reasons, not just for the fundamental reasons, but also for the reasons of, I mean, like the fundamental reasons being the fact that you can tie things like revenues to ETH, the asset, but also the other less obvious things like ETH's use as a money, ETH's use as a store of value, all of the other use cases that are coming for ETH through restaking and EigenLayer. Like, I know that there are a lot of concerns about restaking generally on Ethereum, but if we're looking at it without the concerns, we're just looking at it at a purely kind of positive fundamental driver for Ethereum as an ecosystem and ETH as an asset, it is stupidly bullish, guys. Like, I don't think people realize how incredible restaking actually is as a primitive. And as I said, we're ignoring the risks for now, just for the sake of the argument. But think about what shared security enables. Think about the fact that you're not only sharing the security of some shitty random network, you're sharing the security of Ethereum. You have the Ethereum node operator set, which consists of tens of thousands of entities at your disposal who are experienced in running infrastructure, and then you have billions, tens of billions of dollars worth of ETH to tap into to get your economic security from in order to spin up any service you want. Because EigenLayer has the concept of AVSs where you can spin up anything you want. There's EigenDA, there's going to be oracles, there's going to be bridges, there's going to be sequences, literally anything you want. Now, if you're a team out there thinking to yourself, I want to decentralize all these parts of my stack, how do I do this? Well, you're going to look at EigenLayer and be like, wow, I can actually just tap into Ethereum security and decentralize my stack through EigenLayer. And that's going to happen. And that's going to be a huge unlock for ETH as an asset because all of that flows back to ETH. All of the activity of that flows back to ETH as an asset. And then all of that flows back to Ethereum as a network as well. So I think people are really severely underestimating just how much of a bullish driver that's going to be. And that feeds into the fact that ETH is extremely undervalued, in my opinion here. I think that this is just classic short-term market dynamics playing out, where people are still playing the BTC ETF trade, right? We're in end of year or like December period where ETH is normally weak against BTC, so there's that trader kind of sentiment there. And no one wants to be the first in either. Like the traders that are trading this stuff, they don't want to be catching falling knives. They'd rather enter in once the chart looks better, so to speak, right? That's just the way they think. And this may be a foreign kind of concept to you if you're not a trader, which I don't think a lot of you guys are, but it is the way they think then. And things can change overnight. I mean, ETH has been underperforming BTC for quite a while now, pretty much like for 6 months now, since it went back up mid-year, but the thing is, that can change really, really quickly, and it can change in like a week or not even. And then from there, ETH can just go up only for a while. I mean, I linked a chart in the Daily Gwei Discord channel today where I basically showed that every single December since ETH started trading, or every single like Q4 since ETH started trading, except one, so last year, ETH has actually gone down against Bitcoin. And then in January, it pivots and rockets up. Literally, like there are 8 years of data. That's 8 years of data to pull from. That's not just a once off. So there is a lot of seasonality here. There is a lot of cyclical stuff happening here. And I think that the reason why last year was an outlier was because of the merge. The merge obviously had people like bullish on ETH, and they had people bullish on ETH against BTC. And it was an anomaly because usually ETH BTC craters in a bear market, but last year it actually didn't. The whole bear market, it basically stayed flat, and then it's just been bleeding slowly this year. But as I said, I think that's like a market dynamic thing. It's the BTC ETF stuff, but these things pivot really, really quickly. And I do think that the narrative obviously goes away as soon as BTC gets the ETF, because everyone's just like, okay, well, BTC got the ETF. There's no more narrative. There's no more telling people, oh, BTC is going to get an ETF. Yes, it's still bullish because it's reality now, and we have these passive flows coming in via the ETF. But the market always wants a narrative. It doesn't want the reality. It wants a narrative. So as I've said plenty of times to you guys, what do you think happens after the BTC ETFs get approved? The narrative immediately shifts to ETH ETFs. Immediately. Like, you're going to see it happen literally overnight. And that's when I think that ETH, based on, I guess, like short-term movements, will definitely start performing, or at least maybe start performing a little bit before that as people try to front run that there. But yeah, purely from like a fundamental driver perspective, ETH is stupidly undervalued. I'm still buying ETH, guys. Like, I haven't slowed down my buys. Even though I would have loved to buy even more below 2K, I'm still buying here. Like, I'm not buying as much as I can. I mean, I don't have that much fiat to buy with anymore. I mean, I'm buying basically using funds that I'm getting from some kind of yield farming that I'm doing, and I also at the same time obviously are getting more ETH from my validators, which is very nice. Like, mind you, it's probably the best way to stack ETH because like I'm doing it and getting rewarded for my work on the network, and it's just fun. But generally, yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here, but I think Ryan's tweet really nailed it on the head, and the engagement that he got in this tweet was actually pretty insane. I mean, 1.6 million views with 5,600 likes, 1,000 retweets. A lot of comments, of course, because there's going to be people disagreeing with him in there, blah, 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 whatever. But it was actually surprising for me to see this tweet get so much engagement, to be honest. And I'm glad it did, because it means that there are a lot of ETH bulls out there still. They've just been drowned out by the noise over the past few months. But I think ETH's going to have a revenge arc very soon. And I think ETH is going to perform very well over the coming years. Now, I did mention I wanted to talk a little bit about ETH's staking yield and real staking yield. But first, I will kind of talk about this tweet that I put out today. And I mentioned this yesterday, but ETH has been net deflationary since basically the merge, and the trend has been down only. Like, this is one of the most bullish charts in crypto to me. I don't care what the market's doing. The market is wrong. Like, literally, the market is 100% wrong on ETH right now. Like, I haven't felt like this since late 2019, early 2020. And you can go look at the price of ETH back then and go look at ETH against BTC back then to see how right I was about that feeling. So I haven't felt like this since then in terms of the market being wrong. But yeah, this is one of the most bullish charts in crypto for me. But obviously, like, not all of the ETH is burned. It's like 70-80% of the ETH is burned. It depends on the base fee versus the tips. And then the rest of it, known as tips, goes to validators. And then another portion of the execution layer rewards, the MEV rewards, goes to validators as well. So I actually put out a tweet that I don't have up here today where I basically explained how this works, where the validator rewards come in two parts. You've got the consensus layer rewards, which are new ETH emissions. So that's brand new ETH being minted by the network to pay out to validators. Then there's the execution layer rewards, which make up tips, which is unburned fee revenue, and MEV related payments through the MEV Boost network. Now, the execution layer rewards are what's considered a real yield. It's not a yield being paid out by the issuance, right? By the inflationary rewards. It's yield being paid out by users of the network, by the people using the network to do their transactions, people using the MEV Boost network, obviously. The searchers using the MEV Boost network for bundles, and then to throw those bundles to validators. And then on top of that, the ETH that is burned, right, the 70-80% of the fee revenue that is burned, that goes to all ETH holders. So not only do you have, as a validator, the tips plus MEV as a real yield, you also have the very real effect of the burn on ETH, which over the longer term basically cushions ETH's downside. That's my strong belief on it. I don't think it has as much of a, effect on the upside as much as it has an effect on the downside, where essentially, because there's obviously less supply out there, and there's a consistent burn, and it's a great narrative too, you essentially have like this cushioning of ETH to the downside. And that obviously is good for the long term, because it means that ETH doesn't go down as much, which means that it starts from a higher floor, which means it can go higher. There's a bunch of dynamics in that. But ETH validators, get all of that, right? Get that as a real yield. Now, this is going to be incredibly enticing for TradFi, because obviously the first ETFs that are going live are not staked ETH ETFs. They're just normal spot ETH ETFs. But do you think they're going to stop there? The next thing they're going to do is find a way to do staked ETH ETFs, right? And it's not going to be hard for them to do this. Like, they're going to get it done. And then we're going to see a lot of ETH going to staking. And obviously the rewards for everyone comes down generally. But really, if you believe that the Ethereum network is going to continue to grow, you believe that these institutions are going to keep using the chain and paying the high fees on layer one, then there's going to be a lot of rewards going to validators. And this real yield is going to be very enticing to the investors in the TradFi world who love passive income, right? And that is going to be really bullish for ETH too. So not only do you have all of the stuff that I mentioned before when I springboarded off Sean Adams' tweet there, but you also have the burn. You also have the fact that there's been a massive issuance reduction of ETH since the merge, which hasn't played out yet, in my opinion, because we haven't seen a massive demand spike on ETH yet. But you also have the real yield narrative too. And the yield narrative is the main narrative that I think we should, as the Ethereum ecosystem, be harping on a lot about. I mean, obviously, Ethereum is more than a yield-bearing network. ETH as an asset is bullish for more than just that reason. But when you are talking about the investable case for ETH, those are the points that you should be hitting on, definitely. The fact that you can get a real yield and the fact that ETH is net deflationary. I know that may sound like magic to some people, but I've actually put out a tweet before where I've explained how this works, where essentially, the new issuance is really low and the fee revenue is really high, so that is why we burn more than we issue, right? And the reason the validator rewards are so high is because the issuance is spread out over the entire ETH supply, whereas the in terms of like the percentage of the total supply of ETH going up, but in terms of the total ETH staked, the issuance is a lot higher for the stakers. So it's like 3% or something for the stakers, or 2 to 3%, probably more like 2% these days, or something like that, to the stakers, but it's like less than 1% across the entire network. And then you have the tips and MEV on top of that. You get high yield for stakers. You get a deflationary asset because of the ETH burning, and you also get the fact that people can ask, where does the yield come from? And you can literally point to where the yield comes from. Like there's no hiding it, right? It's all public, it's all open. You can see where it's coming from. So yeah. Anyway, I know I said at the start of this that this wouldn't be a bullish rant, but it turned into a bullish rant. Like I made myself more bullish. Maybe I'm gonna go buy some more ETH after I finish the refuel today. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed that. And I know some of you have been saying lately, when's ETH gonna catch up? It's been underperforming BTC, blah blah blah. Just give it a bit more time, guys. Like I'm not gonna guarantee anything here, but I have a strong feeling over the next year at least, ETH's gonna perform very very well against against USD, but also against other assets in crypto. All right, so I was talking about EigenLayer before. They've got a new announcement today that they've created a new Twitter account just for their EigenLayer DA or EigenDA solution here, which you can go follow. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. And they've also announced their launch partner program, which they have featured 8 rollup partners using EigenDA for data availability. So to kick things off on this, they've done a case study on Layer N, which is a L2 that I've covered on the refuel before, which actually, funny enough, started out as a Layer 2 for Solana, but has obviously pivoted to Ethereum here. And they're using EigenDA for data availability while using Ethereum Layer 1 for posting their proofs and for their bridge and everything like that. But great to see that EigenDA already has 8 partners. That's pretty crazy. And you guys know that I'm really bullish on EigenDA because of the fact that it taps into Ethereum's shared security via restaked ETH. And I believe that that's going to make EigenDA the most secure data availability layer. It remains to be seen what the costs are like. I feel like the costs are still going to be really, really low and very competitive with the other data availability products out there. But really, when you talk about DA as a primitive, as I've said before, you only have a few solutions out there that are going to be, I guess, like long-term solutions. You have EigenDA, you have Celestia, which is live. EigenDA is not live yet. And then you have Avail, which is also not live, and a couple of others out there. I'm forgetting the name right now. And then, of course, you have Ethereum L1 as a DA layer, which it's getting better with 4844, and it's going to get even better with full dank sharding, but that's going to take a few years to play out here. But yeah, I think that EigenDA is definitely going to be a very big deal. You should go follow the Twitter account if you want to stay updated on all of the stuff that they're doing. I'll link that in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, speaking of EIP 4844, the Scroll team has put together a nice blog post on Scroll here. So actually, Mohammed from the Scroll team, the Scroll research team, I should say, has put together a really great blog post on data availability in a 4844 world. So you should definitely go check this out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But this is a little bit technical as well. I mean, it is actually more than a little bit technical. It's quite technical. It gets into the weeds of exactly how 4844 works and how Scroll is going to be working within the confines of 4844 and taking advantage of it. So if you're interested in learning all about that, you should definitely go check out this blog post. I just wanted to shout it out for you guys. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to check out. All right, so Kane from Synthetics has put together a great little tweet thread here today talking about a bunch of projects that he's excited on in and around, I guess, like the Synthetics ecosystem and the Optimism ecosystem generally, but not just exclusive to that. So you can go check out his full thread for the list of projects that he's bullish on. I generally don't highlight threads like this because I don't want to, play favorites with projects, and I don't want to kind of shill any particular project here, but there are a lot of projects in this thread, and that's why I kind of that's why I kind of want to bring it up today. And really, the one that I would disagree most with here, and I disagree with a couple of others, but I'm not going to name names here, but the one I disagree most with is Pyth. Not because it is a Solana project or anything like that, but because it is backed by Jump Crypto, and I consider Jump Crypto to be a really bad actor in the space. And there's plenty of evidence of their shenanigans in the space and what they've been doing in the space. I mean, it's not hard to find that. You can just Google it. But like, just to give you a hint, they were very intertwined with both Terra and FTX, and yeah, obviously we know what happened with Terra and FTX. So yeah, I don't trust Jump at all, and they're a big backer of Pyth. So by extension, I don't trust Pyth really. And it remains to be seen. Maybe they can kind of break away from those chains and build something cool. I haven't looked too much into it, but I would say that's the only one I really strongly disagree with. There are a couple of others here that I may disagree with, but at the same time, looking at them, I haven't looked into all of them very closely either. And yeah, I mean, I just wanted to highlight this thread for you guys to go check them out yourself, because Kane obviously has his pulse on the ecosystem as well. So you definitely go check this out. I'll link the thread in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, last up here was just an update on the Ethereum documentary called Ethereum, the Infinite Garden. So Linda Shea here, who is one of the producers behind this documentary, said, our Ethereum doc is in its final stages of editing and we're collecting how people who contributed to the Mirror crowdfund want their names to be credited in the film. Please fill out the form if you contributed and haven't given us your name credits already. So yeah, do that. It's linked here. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But this is one of, I think, 3 Ethereum documentaries or Ethereum related films coming out over the next few months. I'm not in this one, but I was in another one that I don't think has been announced yet. Maybe it will be. But yeah, I love seeing these things because this is how we get the Ethereum message out to like a wider audience, to more of a mainstream audience, and to people who may not have been paying attention to the Ethereum ecosystem before, and maybe they just see some headlines in the mainstream media and stuff like that, and they have an ill view of Ethereum. But these documentaries, especially Ethereum, the Infinite Garden here, is all about highlighting the positives of Ethereum, the social layer, the fundamentals, the technical stuff, and not really focusing on the price and stuff like that, because that's the stuff that we need people to be aware of, because most people are only aware of the price action of crypto, obviously, because that's all the media focuses on. So I'm really excited for these documentaries to go live over the next few months, and I'll obviously keep you guys updated on all of that and how that goes and where you can watch them, all that good stuff there. But I've got a few minutes left here. There's one last thing I wanted to talk about, which is, I guess, kind of in relation to my bullish rant before about ETH. I kind of have, I wouldn't call it an issue with kind of certain people who do this, but it's something that like grinds my gears, so to speak, is that when people talk about ETH as an asset, there's always these kind of 3 sides to it. So there's the side of like, okay, you're really bullish on ETH because of such and such and such reason. But then the other 2 sides are you're bearish on ETH and Ethereum because of just crappy reasons. And one of those sides is the Bitcoin community, or the majority of the Bitcoin community. They come at ETH and they hate on ETH and Ethereum and they're bearish on it. And they don't actually understand why they're bearish on it. I think they're just bearish on it because it's not Bitcoin. Okay, whatever, fine. But then you have the other side of it, which is literally everything else, right? All the other layer 1 communities, all the other people who just don't think Ethereum is a good design, or Ethereum is broken, or high gas fees, blah, 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 all the same FUD. So you have basically this kind of pincer thing where you have the Bitcoiners on this side, and you have like the other layer 1 people on this side, and then you have Ethereum in the middle. And these 2 groups are just always attacking Ethereum, right? Always fighting Ethereum. They're always kind of bringing Ethereum down, always saying why they're bearish on Ethereum. And yet, I will end this on a positive note, and yet, in the face of all of that, right, ETH is still the number 2 crypto asset by market cap. Number 3 is pretty far away, if you exclude stablecoins, obviously. Right? The Ethereum ecosystem, as I explained yesterday, is still thriving more than ever if we're just looking at on-chain stats, but look at off-chain stats, it's even better. ETH as an asset is poised to do very, very well over the next couple of years, as I talked about before, and Ethereum as an ecosystem hasn't slowed down. I mean, the amount of builders that are still coming into the ecosystem is huge. Like, I see it all the time. So even though we have, like, this pincer effect of Ethereum, where we've got, like, essentially some, walls closing in on us all the time, Ethereum is still thriving. So what does that tell us? Well, what that tells us is, my favorite catchphrase, guys, the narrative can be more powerful than the reality, but reality is reality, right? Reality is something that plays out over the longer term. The narratives disappear, they change, they're not sticky because of the fact that they are narratives. And in the face of all of that hate that Ethereum gets, in the face of all of that FUD, if Ethereum can keep succeeding and keep being as valuable as it is, which it has for many, many years now, then its chances of success just go up exponentially. And there's nothing really to be worried about. But I always see people worrying about this. They're just like, oh, the narrative of Ethereum and ETH is so bad on Twitter. It's like, who cares? Like, okay, yeah, it's bad, but who cares? Because that narrative doesn't mean anything, hasn't changed anything. The fundamentals are better than ever. The usage, the on-chain fundamentals are better than ever. The fundamentals of ETH are better than ever. ETH is about to get an ETF alongside BTC, guys. Like, there is so much stuff that reality trumps narrative for, and if all you do is sit on crypto Twitter all day and read the bullshit narratives, of course you're going to be bearish on Ethereum and ETH. But if you look at the reality, you can't help but be anything but bullish, right? Anyway, I told you I was going to end on a bullish note, and that's the note there. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks everyone.